All right, so more big headline making news out of LIV yesterday. So first, let me read you the statement of what was said, and then we'll kind of like talk a little bit about what we think here. And as always, one thing we like to do is we leave the comments open on this so you guys can share all your own opinions, because a lot of it is, opinion driven, speculation. And I know people are on both sides of the fence of this. And I think we're learning as we go where everyone sits and what your thoughts are. So we open the community up, so by all means, let us know your comments. But what was said yesterday, first, it's important to know who said it. It was Majed Al-Sajjour, and I know I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, and I apologize for that. But what he is, he's the CEO of Saudi Golf, right? So obviously, he'd be the big player behind LIV Golf. And what he said was, for now, the majors are siding with the tour, and I don't know why. If the majors decide not to have our players play, I will celebrate. I will create my own majors for my players. And this had me thinking, I'm like, first thing I have to ask and I have to question is whether or not he's truly serious. Because he could be serious, but there could also be an aspect of this where ultimately what he's doing is just, trolling for the purpose of bringing a lot of, eyeballs onto LIV. I mean, once he said this, it was a New Yorker article that was published this week, but it splashed on every single news outlet headline over the last 24 hours. We saw it on USA Today, Reuters. It was everywhere. So to a certain extent, I have to be a little bit like cynical and wonder, like, did he just say this just so that he brings like attention? Like I said, there's, all publicity is good publicity. If you think along those types of lines, free press, like everyone now all of a sudden is talking about LIV again today. And it certainly brings a lot of eyeballs, which is what they need. They need to continue to bring eyeballs. Or ultimately, is he serious? And if he's serious, I just have to wonder what that would do for golf in general. And at least in my take, you can't just have an event and just label it a major. The majors themselves didn't become quote unquote majors that way. If you look back, far back in history, originally the original four majors were the British Open, the Open Championship, and the amateur that they had in the UK. And then you had the US Open and the US Amateur. And they became majors largely because they were just the biggest golf tournaments. They were some of the first tournaments to become televised. They were the tournaments that everybody wanted to play in. They were the opens that everyone went through qualifying to be in, whether you're at the amateur or the professional level. And then later on, the introduction of the Masters and then the PGA Championship. But they were not even referred to as majors until many decades after being played that way. I don't think the first reference of being called majors was something until like the 1950s, or even dipping into like the Jack Nicklaus era. And they were referred to as majors because of the size and scope. I think just even the concept of just creating an event and just self-labeling it a major, it kind of takes the impact, the power away from it. But I think the bigger question that I have is that, does this signify some sort of identity crisis that LIV might be going through? Because now we're seeing that's like, okay, well, our players want to play in majors, so if we can't do that, we're going to make our own. And last week we talked about the big news and the speculation that we've heard about LIV moving to 72 holes and working on getting those the cut events so that they can get the official World Golf Rankings, which makes me think they're sounding like they're trying to become more and more like the tours that we know and see every day. The PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, they sound like they're moving that direction, which makes me wonder, like, their original kind of mission statement, this whole golf but louder, was to create something different, something new, something that wasn't on the PGA Tour, something that we weren't seeing week in and week out, which was these big, almost party type of events that were 54 holes, shotgun, teams, moving quickly, jumping all over the place, and then ending with a concert afterwards, right? So to me, that's different. That's new. And if you want to be different and stay different, then my thinking is maybe stay that way. When I think of a major, one thing that I think of is grueling competition. It's the best players in the world. You think about like even like the US Open or the Open Championship, they're opens. Even though you have a lot of what you see your PGA Tour and your European Tour guys there and they're qualifying, you also have qualifying stages. And the idea was always just to bring the best golfers in the world together and let them play. And then we played on a very difficult track. You'd find whatever the most premier courses were, set them up as hard as you can set them up and make it a true grueling test of golf. 72 holes, a cut line, all that type of stuff. If LIV was to just take their normal events, which are much smaller fields, no cut and 54 holes, and just, I guess the way that maybe I could think that they could do this would be to maybe up the prize money for one event and call it that one's the major, because it's a bigger purse for that one. To me, by definition, it's not in the same ballpark because of the fact that it's not changing the competition in any way. To me, like things that would change that would be if LIV opened it up and they had their own open and anyone could qualify to be in it, and they expanded the field and all those types of things. But again, where I think that this might be, if they go this route, almost a misstep, is I think that there's a potentially a place for everything. I think about the waste management, right? Put the waste management Phoenix Open next to the Masters at Augusta. To me, it's very much the difference between the party on Saturday night and church on Sunday morning. They have two very, very different vibes, but they also have two very, very different appeals, and they're appealing in different ways, the different moments in time or whatever you want to call it. So I think as much as like the waste management is the PGA Tour's party, if LIV truly wanted to be that, golf but louder, and be the party and be like, just be that. Be the tour where people go for it's a good time, it's fast paced, we've got no cut, so you get to see all the golfers that you want to play. Somebody walks away with a huge paycheck, and then afterwards we have a big concert. I mean, I think about the final in Miami. They've got, I forget who they've got headlining. They got like Travis. Who they've got headlining that thing?
They have Snoop and Travis Scott.
Snoop and Travis Scott. So, okay. That's, to me, it's a party. It's fun. And it's like, I just wonder, is it an identity crisis? Is LIV trying to be too many things? When I think of a major, I think, like I said, real prestigious golf courses, the toughest layouts, the biggest and strongest fields. And it's got a lot of that type of tradition and traditional prestige to it. That to me is a major, and it has its place. But likewise, this other types of golf, this fun, a little bit more laid back, the crowd is loud, it's almost like the Ryder Cup almost walks the line of being a little bit of both. But I think that LIV has the opportunity, if they wanted to be so different as they did from the start, they wanted to be so different, just be that way rather than trying to just do the same thing that we're seeing, like the majors, but have our own majors. And now we're creating two separate types of things. And it makes me even wonder what some of these other guys who are major winners, like Phil Mickelson, who are on the tour, what were their thoughts beyond this? And I hope that they get interviewed and someone, kind of pushes them to say what they think about LIV starting majors, because you get a guy like Phil and how much the majors have meant to him in his career and how much prestige it carried for him. Does it kind of wash that down a little bit? Water that down a little bit when now, you worked so hard for that green jacket and that ultimate of golf major, and then LIV, now you're on LIV and they turn around and be like, oh, by the way, next week is going to be a major. What is a guy like Phil, who's lived in that other world, feel like? So listen, I've been reading through a lot of the comments since this come out. I've been reading all over social media, and it like everything with LIV, it's split down the middle. There's a lot of people who are laughing it off and saying you can't just label something a major and it just is. There's a lot of, admittedly, some people like poking fun and poking holes in it. And then there's the other side, inevitably the LIV, supporters and fans who are saying, well, I'm sick of the PGA Tour calling all the shots and being the only game in town. And I know the majors aren't the PGA Tour, but we're talking about how here again in the quote was that the majors are kind of siding with the PGA Tour and the official World Golf Rankings and all that. So there's a lot of people saying like, listen, it's been 100 years plus of some of these majors. It's time for a change. It's time for somebody else to come in and bring something new to the table. But ultimately, I think all this really does is raise more questions than answers. And the biggest question for me, and I yet to see, and we'll see how this plays out, is whether this was something that was seriously stated, like you're going to seriously see some events on the schedule next year that LIV is going to say are there majors, or was this just, hey, let's apply a little bit more pressure to the official World Golf Rankings to include us by threatening majors, and if nothing else, we'll grab a bunch of headlines and free press over it. We'll have to see. But either way, that's the news. That was the big shakeup yesterday, and I want to see what everybody's thoughts are on this. So drop them in the comments below, and we'll continue to report on it and debate it as more rolls out. I just thought it was a very interesting approach by LIV.